Hello, everyone. Today we are finishing up the trial in To Kill a Mockingbird. I love this book so much, and I've read it multiple times, but these chapters always hit me pretty hard. So we're going to start with a quick overview of what happens in these chapters. We have Scout and Dill having sort of an odd conversation with Mr. Raymond. We'll touch on that briefly. We also have Atticus's closing statement to the jury, which is honestly one of the most powerful speeches in the book. And in chapter 21, you have Jem being absolutely positive that they're going to win the case, that Tom will be acquitted and cleared of all charges. However, the jury chooses instead to rule Tom guilty, despite the overwhelming amount of evidence to the opposite. And after that, you have a very solemn response from the balcony where the kids have been watching the trial. All right, so a brief note on Dolphus Raymond. We've talked about him before. You may remember him as the drunk guy with mixed children, but we're going to revisit him because when Scout takes Dill out of the courthouse after Dill starts crying about how cruel Mr. Gilmer is to Tom, they meet Dolphus Raymond, and Mr. Raymond reveals that his whiskey bottle inside his paper bag is in fact nothing but Coca-Cola, and that he really doesn't drink much at all. And this is really confusing to the kids at first. Why would someone pretend to be the town drunk? But Mr. Dolphus Raymond explains this. He explains that he pretends to be drunk because he tries to give them a reason, you see, because the townspeople of Maycomb would never understand that I live like this, that he lives with the black woman as his, for all intents and purposes, as his wife, because that's how he wants to live. So when Scout asks why he chooses to reveal this to them, Mr. Raymond tells her that it's because Dill is still innocent enough to understand what he's talking about. He's still young enough that he recognizes black people as people, and it still hurts him when he sees a black person mistreated. When he gets older, Dill will likely be too affected by the hidden racism all around him to even think twice about seeing a black person treated with disrespect. And this is really important because when Dill gets older, it's not like he's going to turn into a terrible person, but he is going to start seeing the world in a certain way that's colored by prejudice, that prejudgment that dehumanizes people who are not like him. We've talked about this in our Holocaust unit, but dehumanization happens every day around us. It can be really difficult to see because it often starts in small ways. You see Mr. Gilmore just calling Tom boy, which in and of itself is not disrespectful, but it's how he says it, the fact that he is choosing to treat him as a child instead of as a grown adult. And so what Mr. Raymond is getting at here is that sometimes a younger person has a better chance at seeing beyond these prejudices. Because the older you get, the more effort it takes, because your vision of the world has become desensitized to certain ways people mistreat each other. And I think we would do a large disservice to Harper Lee's novel if we didn't use this conversation between Dill and Dolphus Raymond to do a quick check in our own lives and ask what prejudices have we allowed into our view of the people around us and around the world. All right, number 2, Atticus's closing statements to the jury. There is so much in these few pages, and I will do my best to fly through them. So if you get a little bit confused or if I go too fast, you can always rewind the video and watch a section again. All right, first of all, Atticus's tone. Atticus talks to the jury without the political jargon you might expect to hear in a trial. He addresses them as people and in a tone of friendship and familiarity. Remember, Maycomb is a small town, so all of these guys on the jury are his friends. He knows them all pretty well. Atticus says, this case is as simple as black and white. Harper Lee gives us a pretty obvious smack in the face with the fact that the jury is dealing with an issue of black versus white, of race. The evidence all points to the fact that Mr. Ewell is guilty, not Tom. But because Tom is black, the jury would be doing something unheard of by acquitting a black man, by saying that he is innocent. During his closing remarks, Atticus also says, the defendant is not guilty, but someone in this courtroom is. And Atticus is, of course, referring to Mr. Ewell, whom we know attacked his daughter and has probably done so in various ways on multiple occasions. Atticus continues to say, I have nothing but pity for her. I have nothing but pity in my heart for the chief witness for the state, that's Mayella, but my pity does not extend so far as to her putting a man's life at stake, which she has done in an effort to get rid of her own guilt. We'll deal with that idea of guilt in a second. But I want you to note that Atticus does not condemn Mayella for her testimony, because Atticus also, without stating it explicitly, is accusing Mr. Ewell of domestic violence. Also, as a side note, some of you guys had questions about this, but domestic violence and things like that were not dealt with in the same way in the 30s as they are now. Mr. Ewell would likely not have been very severely punished for his treatment of Mayella, and especially not legally punished for that. And so Mayella is really stuck in her situation with any good way to escape except by trying to appease her father's anger and erase her guilt of acting out this social taboo by her testimony. And this is mainly why she agrees to testify. She doesn't have many other options, and Atticus recognizes this and sort of reaches out to her while also accusing her father. So let's also dig into that idea of guilt. You're probably a little bit curious what guilt he's talking about, because he's not referring to her guilt in testifying against Tom. Yes, that's a bad thing, but he's not saying that she's guilty because of it. Atticus is talking about how Mayella tried to kiss a black man. He says she has merely broken a rigid and time-honored code in our society, a code so severe that whoever breaks it is hounded from our midst as unfit to live with. And here you get a brief reference to Dolphus Raymond, who has been cut out of community in Maycomb because he fell in love with a black person. And Atticus reiterates this to the jury, that Mayella did something that in our society is unspeakable. She kissed a black man. She broke this social rule, and afraid of her dad, she tried to cover it up this so-called sin or guilt of that action by testifying against him. All right, number 5. Atticus goes on for about 2 pages about prejudice and the idea that all black men lie, versus the truth that he brings up that all humans struggle with immorality in some way, shape, or form. He calls out the jury for their prejudice, asserting that black people are just as prone to misconduct as white men, no more, no less, and that they should therefore be judged without preconceived ideas that all black men do X, Y, or Z. Atticus's second to last talking point in his closing statement says that all men are created equal. He continues to say that while some people might be smarter, have more opportunity or more money, or have other things that can create inequalities in society, he asserts that the court system should be a place that holds this idea of equality to the highest standard. And he tells them, gentlemen, a court is no better than each man of you sitting before me on this jury. A court is only as sound as its jury, and a jury is only as sound as the men who make it up. He reminds them that it's their duty as individual humans to see Tom as a human and to judge him without prejudice, centering on this idea that if men are actually created equal, you have a responsibility to act that out in this court. And then Atticus closes his statement with some honest begging for justice, saying, in the name of God, do your duty. In the name of God, believe him. Atticus ends with this appeal to the men's faith. Remember, they're pretty much all Christians. That's very strong values in their society. And an appeal to their duty to be an impartial jury. His closing words are nowhere near something you'd hear in a big fancy court case, because they're just not, right? But because Atticus has this relationship with the men on the jury, and because of this overwhelming evidence of Tom's innocence against the overwhelming knowledge of prejudice, Atticus begs them to find Tom innocent. Okay, that was a lot for chapter 20. Chapter 21 is super brief, so I won't spend very much time on it. I just want to highlight a few brief things. The first thing I want to talk about is Jem's certainty. Jem is so certain that Tom will be acquitted, found not guilty, that he tells everyone who will listen to him that they're going to win the case. He tells the Reverend, "Don't fret, we've won it," he said wisely. Don't see how any jury could convict on what we've heard." To which the Reverend responds with a little bit more wisdom. He has more years on him. He gets the social system a lot more than Jem does. He says, "Now don't you be so confident, Mr. Jem. I ain't ever seen a jury decide in favor of a colored man over a white man." Because you see, Reverend Sykes knows that there is a lot more going on in this trial than truth versus lie. He recognizes the enormous amount of prejudice that's up against Tom, and he cautions Jem not to count the case as won too quickly. And once again, we see a child see beyond the prejudice to the point where Jem doesn't even recognize that this is going to be such a big issue because he is still innocent enough that he doesn't recognize that. All right, number 2, the jury's verdict. There is a fascinating quote on page 240 that I want to read for you. Scout says, "I saw something," so this is right before the jury comes back to announce that Tom is guilty. She says, "I saw something only a lawyer's child could be expected to see, could be expected to watch for. And it was like watching Atticus walk into the street, raise a rifle to his shoulder, and pull the trigger, but watching all the time, knowing that the gun was empty." I want you to remember Tim Johnson, the mad dog, who we said symbolizes racism and prejudice back in chapter 10. Scout is sort of reliving that moment, except for this time, Atticus's gun is empty and there is no way for him to possibly defeat the racism and the prejudice in the court in the same way that he so easily took down Tim Johnson in chapter 10. So once again, you have innocence versus prejudice come up, but you have the innocence of Tom versus the prejudice of the jury. All right, very last thing to mention is the balcony's response. The jury finds Tom guilty, and Atticus packs up his briefcase and walks down the aisle. As he walks, someone nudges Scout to stand up, and it's the Reverend Sykes saying, "Miss Jean Louise, stand up. Your father's passing." Every member of the balcony, where the Black people have to sit, stand up out of respect for the fact that Atticus did his best to save the life of Tom. He went against the norms and expectations and codes in Maycomb to defend a Black man because he believed that Tom was innocent. And the Black people recognize this, and they pay their respects even though Atticus lost the case. And remember, everybody except the kids knew all along that Atticus was fighting a fight that he couldn't win. He was fighting Tim Johnson, that racism, that prejudice, with an empty gun. All right, on that cheery note, we have finished our sprint through these 2 chapters. Leave me a comment if you have a question. As always, I really appreciate the hard work you guys have put into understanding this book, even though we can't see each other in person. I hope you all have an awesome spring break, and I will talk to you again when we get back.